Welcome to the Power Curve. I'm Holly Scott. In our podcast, I have the opportunity to chat with accomplished industry executives regarding decisions, pivotal decisions they made along their career path, with the idea to empower you, our listeners, as you navigate your own career trajectory. Today, I'm pleased to have Anjana Harve with me. She is the Senior VP and Chief Information Officer at Fresenius Medical North America. Anjana has experienced an extensive background in healthcare, including prior experience at Novartis as well as Hillrom, amongst others. So thank you so much for joining us today. Truly a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Holly. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So I'd love to just jump in and talk about your early career. I know you have a foundation in computer science, and that is a tremendous and very popular foundation today. So could you tell us a little bit about your early days, perhaps your childhood, and what led you to that decision and to go after that degree at the time?
Sure, absolutely. It takes me back in time, but it's wonderful to reflect back on it, Holly. I'd say I think growing up, I was really always been very interested in science. Math and science, I think, attracted me a lot, and maybe it's the problem solving of it. I'm not sure as I look back and think about it, but it really attracted me, and I've always took part in a lot of competitions and things like that. Even though I come from a family, my father's actually a judge, so I did not come from a very core engineering background or anything of that sort. But I think I was fascinated just growing up, and my parents were very supportive and let me kind of pursue my path and my passions. And so as I started doing it and getting exposed when I was getting into college and what potential paths, if you will, that I can take, certainly there was a number of engineering tracks that I was thinking through. But I think, again, it's maybe the problem solving part of this that sort of drew me into computer science. At one point in my career, I was in my college, as I was entering college, I was thinking about, is it law or is it computer science? Because I had, as I mentioned, my father was a lawyer. And a lot of times I wonder, there are two diametrically opposite sort of paths, if you will, and kind of what drew me. But I think it's, again, that problem solving analytical skills that I think that apply in both settings that probably drew me to something that looked so diverse on paper when you thought about sort of different career paths to take. But regardless, I think I ended up in computer science and I've loved it. I think it's right from day one, whether it was actually solving problems and being a computer engineer or whether it's managing computer systems and teams now, I think it's that aspect of it that I think still draws me to it.
Wow, that's fascinating. And you had a lot of support from your family early on towards that career trajectory. That's great to hear. I'm sure you're well aware there's a bit of initiative now, and there has been for some time, but it's growing momentum in STEM in early education, especially for women and for young girls. Was there something within your foundation that, as you reflect, helped support you along that path? Engineering is one that, in some foundations, including mine growing up, it wasn't necessarily seen as a girl job, right? It was one of the you're a teacher, you're a nurse, or you go towards that. Was there a support, or was there messaging in your household, or was there something that you feel was fundamentally part of your decision that might help, especially us as parents, if we're empowering young girls to go after their dreams? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Holly. And I think if I think back, certainly when I was entering college at the time, there weren't as many girls in there. And especially in India, engineering fields were not as dominated with both genders, if you will. I really think I honestly attributed, I think, to my parents, Holly. They raised me very, very balanced in a balanced household of really either and I just have one sibling. I have a brother who's older than me. And we were raised to kind of both really try and take whatever we are interested in and pursuing a path that's of interest. So he ended up going into the HR career track.
Interesting.
He was very, fascinated about people and the dynamics of human beings, if you will. That's what fascinated him. I was obviously very different from him. And our parents really kind of helped us think through and definitely allowed us to kind of think about pursue your dreams, do whatever it's possible. And I don't think I ever for a second hesitated. And looking back and even further after I finished my career and joined different firms and went through for a long time, and even now, I mean, the numbers are still, as you said, not where they need to be. But I don't think I've actually felt it a lot. At least early part of my career, I should have felt a lot more like, wow, I'm kind of one among so many men here. And I don't think I ever felt it. And I really, truly, I think I completely give that credit to my parents on raising us in a household where everything was equal. We could do what we wanted and what was important. So I think nourishing that kind of an environment so that the child can decide what they want, right? Aptitudes are different, interests are different, and kind of follow your path and your dream, and know that anything is possible. I think that's sort of how I'm really grateful to sort of how they've raised and kind of brought me up that allowed me to pursue that dream.
Yes, that's it. Starts at home, certainly. Was it reinforced in primary and secondary education for you? Did you have supportive teachers that helped guide you as you continued down that path?
Yeah, I definitely did. I don't think it was actually, now that I think about it, it certainly was a supportive environment. I never felt different. So I never felt like, wow, I'm kind of unique or different or very few, if you will, right? When you count the numbers. But the teachers were all very supportive and kind of helping guide things. So I do think the community aspect of it, both your own family, extended network, as well as a community of teachers, all of that, I think giving an environment where people are free to do what they want, I think is really important. So you're right. I don't think it's just the family itself when we come out, especially to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
It's all kinds of environments and people are there. So really having that supportive network does go a pretty long way in reinforcing that.
Oh, absolutely. It's similar to when our clients come to us and they say, you know, we're interested in creating a supportive, diverse environment. We have to remember that that's not a one-step process. That is a community affair. Just as raising children doesn't exclusively, of course, parenting is where it starts. But if you have teachers at school that are consistently telling you a different message, you can get swayed. So if you can have one manager who believes philosophically that you are capable of doing something, but if your team isn't on board or if there's not that supporting message throughout, it takes a village, right?
Exactly.
In each of these scenarios. So yeah, thanks for expanding on that, because I think that that's something that we as a country have become more aware of,
Hmm.
and frankly, India does a tremendous job of
Yeah.
bringing talent and talented women to the forefront. And
Hmm.
I think that I commend you, and I'd like to take some of those pieces and lessons to empower others who are looking for that balance. We're behind the times in so many ways in those regards. So
Exactly. Lots to do there, without a
lots to
doubt.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress for sure.
Yeah.
But no, that's great to hear. So you graduated and then you started at Arthur Anderson, correct? Right? Or was right into
Yes.
consulting, and
Yes.
because college wasn't hard enough, you went to one of the most demanding work environments. Tell me about that. What drew you into consulting, and perhaps share some of the lessons you learned there.
Yeah. So I don't know if I fully planned to be consulting kind of coming out of college, that I was very determined to go down that path. But I think when I interviewed, I was just absolutely excited about the possibility of multiple things and kind of learning different things. So I think learning is a theme as I think through my career, Holly, has always been something very near and dear to my heart, and sort of my upbringing, but also as I've navigated my own career to kind of look out and seek out things that sort of help you continue to learn, right? And try to improve yourself. And consulting is rich environment for that. And so I joined there, and I will tell you, it was probably the best decision I did, and especially early on in my career. So certainly, lots of times people do it somewhere further down in their career, but I think starting up, it gives you a fantastic foundation. So lots of methodology, a structured thinking process, approach to how do you problem solve different kinds of problems, because that's what you get faced as a consultant. You go to this client, you go to a different industry, industries are different, problems are different, solutions are different. So it really teaches you to kind of quickly take a snapshot of what's happening. How do you assess the problem? How do you solve it? It teaches you a lot of things that I think in a practical way
Hmm.
that might sometimes take you a lot of different experiences to get it. So I think I was truly fortunate to kind of get into consulting to get me that level of foundation. And plus, a lot of times I used to think when I was back in those days, and especially with IT, YTK, and all of this, it was hot skills that were there, technology. So I'd walk into a room and like, oh my God, I'm billing at this rate, which is so expensive, and I better like get to figure out what I'm doing and prove my worth, that it's worth paying all this money for a technical consultant who's come in there. I had to up my game. I had to make sure that I was putting my best effort, that I was spending whatever time it was to really make sure that I was bringing the best thinking, collating information from my colleagues in the consulting industry to bring it back to the clients. So it taught me a lot, Holly. I think about leadership, about communication, kind of not being afraid to tackle the unknown because that was every day. There's lots of unknowns. And I think the other part of it is also how do you convince and influence someone? Because in the end, you're not the client to actually make it happen, which is kind of hard sometimes because you know the answer. It's like, oh, this is very logical. Why don't you go do it? Well, there's politics, there's people, there's behavior, there's organizational dynamics, which pure problem solving kind of makes you wonder, right? So it taught me a lot of, wow, I need to be patient and it's not as simple as solving it and putting together a few slides and this is how you have to reorganize, but it takes a lot of emotion and cultural change. So it taught me quite a bit as I went through that journey of during my time. It was fantastic. I'd say the best experience of laying a fantastic foundation that I could then build upon as I went into the industry after that and kind of worked my career through that process.
Interesting. So there was a level of process and structure you took away from it that you could use in many other situations, professionally,
Yes.
personally, I'm sure, and so forth.
Yeah.
Yet there's also this layer of engagement without direct authority, it sounds
Yeah.
like too.
Yes.
So that's sales, whether we like to
Yes.
use that word or not, right? That is sales. That is
It so
sales.
is, Holly. You're spot on with that. It's sales to your teams because you want to attract the best consultants onto your project. Many times you're recruiting, like trying to bring the best team together. So you've
Sure.
got to sell your project if you've got something that you want to build on, sell it to your clients. And actually at Arthur Anderson, we didn't have a separate sales team. So you really actually were trying to sell the work and actually do the work, kind of you turn around and execute it.
Mhm.
And I thought I would never like sales, but you're right. Even though it may not be called that, but I think that's exactly what I was doing. And there's a lot of learning that you get through the process of how do you establish it, how do you communicate, how do you market it, and make sure that you're delivering ultimately on kind of the promise that you've said that you've got. So you're so right.
Yeah, so there's a level of not only process structure, milestones, setting that up appropriately, getting the buy-in, and then you have measurable accomplishments. That is an incredible foundation, especially for those who are young in career, as you were at the time. That experience, I've heard that from a few C-suite executives who have said that their most pivotal, their most important role that they learned the most was
Yeah.
this individual contributor role where they had some level of responsibility, and whether it was product or project management, whatever their title was at the time. And in
Yep.
your case, you were a consultant, but you were handling a project
Yep.
without that direct authority, getting buy-in from individuals ranging from C-suite at the time to clinicians or whomever it might have been.
Yep.
That's a very strong piece of experience that I can see how that you can use in any organization moving forward.
And at any level and any time, right? So those are core foundational skills that really help you tackle a lot of things. So
Mm-hmm.
even though the problems may be very different, what I'm facing today versus what I faced then, but I think it's those fundamental building blocks that teaches you how to kind of decompose things to be able to not be worried. It's an unknown, it's gray. Let's
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to solve the gray. Let's figure out how to change sort of people and mindset and behaviors. It kind of brings all of that together. So
So you're hitting on another great point too. That ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It sounds like you were thrown in.
yes.
So you were thrown in, yet you deliberately chose. So I see this ambition and this confidence within you. Was there a point where you asked yourself, geez, is this really for me? Is this really what I want to do? And if there was that bit of doubt, was there something that played in your head that got you over that obstacle?
Yeah, so I do think back when I think of my consulting career, there was one particular project, Holly, very early on in my career there, where it was a very difficult project we had with a client that hadn't been going well. And I was put onto the project. I was one of the junior most members in the project. And we were like really in a bad spot with the client. I mean, we had not delivered, things were not going well. And so the client turned around and the project manager moved over. And so they were looking for somebody new to come in. And the client actually reached out and asked the partner at Anderson to see if I could take on that role, if I could manage the entire team, which was a lot. I mean, it was my first sort of more official kind of let me run and lead a multi-million-dollar project and getting it done. And I was relatively new, youngest person on the block, if you will, on the team. And there's a lot of seasoned members, and this project had been going on for a while. So it kind of you kind of get the picture. So very scary, very hard. My first really official, I would say, management role that had the opportunity, but a super risky one. I mean, this could go totally. I mean, it was already going down south, but I think the client had seen me interacting with them and sort of had established that relationship. I think that gave them the comfort to say someone cares and is empathizing and understanding the problems to solve it. And so that's why they kind of at least approached it. So it was a pivotal moment, I would say, Holly, in my career at sort of a fork in the road. But I had to decide, do I want to take the risk and take on a role that I would absolutely love because I was longing to kind of move further in my career. And this would be managing a large scale project, but extremely scary and risky when everything could go down and it would be me. And I'm putting myself,
Mm-hmm.
knowing fully well that it was a project that wasn't working well and putting myself out there. So it was definitely a tough decision, but I'm glad I took it. I came home, talked to my husband, and I said, you know what, if you don't take risks in life, and that's what I've learned, you never improve. And it's okay. Even if I fail, it's yet another chance to try something. I've learned something out of it. So I think that's the approach. And so I decided to take that on head on, and it worked well. And we were able to finish the project and get out unscathed and all of that. But it was truly a pivotal moment that I think was scary, was extremely scary. But I'm glad I did it because I learned so much out of that experience that I think I can look back now. So you're right. I think there are, I'm sure all of us have those little forks in the road where a door opens up, but it may not be as simple as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my sort of reflections is take chances, take risks, and push yourself when you're feeling that being scared in your stomach. If that's not there, then probably not the thing that kind of is going to push you out. But it's a calculated way of kind of taking something on to help you grow personally and professionally.
That feeling, that ability in the moment to push yourself through, did that go back to childhood? Was that something that was instilled in you early to go
I,
outside and try new things but mom, dad, I'm scared. Go try.
yeah,
Was that instilled at home?
yes, very much instilled at home. And sort of my father had this mindset, very optimistic mindset. So I think that also sort of complemented go try it out, but it's okay. If you fail,
Mm-hmm.
there's yet another. You just get up and you move on, right? So he was a super optimist. And my mother sort of was the sort of the balancing force saying, it's okay, like be practical, take pragmatic, calculated risks, but move on. So I think the combination of them really helped me. And I agree with you, Holly. I think that really always plays back in my mind of just having the confidence and that it's okay to fail,
It's okay.
and that there's nothing wrong. And if you don't, you actually don't move forward, right? So
That's right.
it's really actually a necessary part of growing. The process of learning does mean, otherwise it's a perfect path, which means you probably haven't taken the outside the comfort zone area. So very much, I think just having that kind of an environment where I felt it was okay
Mm-hmm.
and that it was actually expected and wanted of me, I think has given me that confidence to kind of say, okay, let's give it a shot and let's keep taking one step at a time to move forward.
That's excellent, and that's what I hope that our audience can take with them, because it's easy for all of us to say, you have to push through your fear, go for it, do it. When it's happening to us and in the moment, sometimes we don't recognize it as fear. We recognize it as reluctance, or we recognize it as letting go of that comfy blanket that we've had for a while. And the other end of that is, if it's not optimal, even if it's not optimal, you're coming away stronger with lessons and with a different level of bravery, right, to bring to your next challenge. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I like pulling a little bit more on it, because I see where that comes from, and it adds up over time. Those challenges. It,
Yes.
did you have any strong mentors early in your career that helped guide you, especially from a consulting foundation and then ending up in an operational company? I'd love to hear more about the steps there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if I think back for mentorship, I think there's a variety actually, Holly. So without a doubt, I think my parents, as you've heard my story, as you've gone through, have been huge influence, as well as my husband. I mean, early part, because they were in India, got married, I came here, my husband and I. started our life here and our family here. So he's been a fantastic supporter. I don't think I could have done what I have without having him push me and me push him. So we kind of are there for each other to move it forward. But certainly from a professional front, I've had a couple of bosses, I would say, as I early part of my career, as I was going through, who really were kind of huge role models for me. And so one particular, after I moved from consulting to my next role on really balancing, I would say, strategic thinking with operational activities. I learned a lot from him on how he really was able to balance both, because you sometimes have the short term wins and you've got to drive things forward, but a lot of times you kind of as a person have to think 5 steps ahead, whether it's for your team, your company. And he had a fantastic way of balancing it, because you can't be too short-sighted, nor can you be too always long-term thinking. So I think for me, I've applied that both for just professional work, but also for my career, as I've thought about where and how do I want to learn and grow in my career, as I've taken every role being very deliberate in kind of what am I learning and what can I bring both. There's got to be something new for me to learn. There's got to be something that I can bring to the table, drawing upon my wealth of experiences that I've learned that perhaps help me or help that company as I move forward. So I think he's just watching and learning from him and being part of that experience with him, I think was a huge role model and a mentor for me. And I would say maybe a very unusual mentor more later in my life is actually my kids. So I always tease them, they're my reverse mentors. And really, a lot of times we think about mentors you're kind of role modeling or you're doing it. I think my daughter and my son, have been fantastic, especially my daughter, on truly being my career coach, my advisor, my mentor. Fantastic. So I think there's mentorship in lots of different ways. I guess it may not come in the same sort of package that you we think as folks who might be there, whether it's personal, it's professional, it's kids. It's lots of ways to kind of draw upon different aspects of, I think, what you can learn from others to help you grow personally and professionally.
That's yeah. The family is where it starts. It sounds like that's where you came from, and that's what you've created within your own family circle. That support, you know, we've talked about it within our organization. The number one career decision you make is who you spend your life with, and it sounds like your husband and your family have been incredibly supportive. You've relocated for positions several times, correct?
Yep, I have. Yes, that is right. Yep.
How what advice would you give those who are considering that, especially younger in career, younger with family, young kids, dual career household? What are some of the decisions and things that you weighed that helped optimize your outcomes?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Holly. So certainly, I think the things as think back and as I've gone through the career, as you said, have definitely moved a lot. I think starting with my husband first, I think we both really love our job. It's not just for the sake of a job, but I think we genuinely both love what we're doing and want to be supportive of each other. So I think that's played a very big part in kind of for him having to relocate for me and me having to relocate for him. So we've kind of said, depending on where things are, let's figure out a way to kind of help each other as much as we can to kind of make this a common way for us to help both of us to succeed in our careers. And I think the kids have been a huge part, I would say. So what I've tried to do, I think, Holly, is really bring them into the discussion. One of the things I learned early on is even when they were very little, when they were 5 year old, when they were 6 year old, I would talk to them about the opportunities that I had. A lot of people would say, they're so little. Are you going to go ask their permission to move? But I said, I want to ask their permission, even though they're so little. But we would sit together as a family. I would show them the websites of the company I was applying for, make them part of the process and explain what was going on, and then talk about kind of moving and where we're going. And the kids have been a huge part of my decision making as I've moved together and very supportive. Has it been difficult? Of course it is. I mean, they haven't grown up in one particular city with 10 years or 15 years of kind of schooling in one area. But I think it's taught them on the other side lots of confidence walking into a new school, a new environment when they were teenagers, when they were young, and having the confidence that they can go in and do anything they want and be able to kind of make friends and not feel awkward or difficult. So, yes, we've, of course, any of these scenarios, you lose something, you gain something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, looking and focusing on the positives of multiplying the friends that they've had. Now they still have friends from Dallas to Boston to everywhere. It's actually created a broader network of friends. And so that's been very important. So certainly I think it's been a huge factor, I would say, as I've gone through, is really engaging them, making them part of the decision process, and kind of that's helped me navigate as I've gone through as well, and not and be able to tackle sort of both dual careers that we both have, my husband and I, but also with the kids and helping them navigate through that.
That's that seems like such a poignant area with having that mature conversation with them, even at 5, 6 years old,
Yep.
and allowing them to have a voice and speak through the questions, the emotions, the and knowing that you as parents don't have all the answers. You're working through the
Yep.
data yourself. What a
Yes.
lesson that empowers them with as they go on and start new schools and take with it that resilience. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. I
I
mean, I was feeling guilty early on, but I think now that the kids have grown up, I
mhm,
can actually see them validating and reflecting back and seeing they're so proud and feel like, I'm glad you did this because I know this is what I want for myself.
mhm,
And I wouldn't want my children to doing it. So hearing them now, it's taken me many years. But of course, you have guilt at the earlier
of
part.
course.
But I can tell you coming forward and now seeing my kids sort of the way they are, it
Mhm,
really sort of validates that it's the quality that I think is more important than quantity. And so when you
absolutely.
have little of that, you cherish a lot, you do a lot, and that really, I think, goes a long way.
Oh, without doubt. And it's funny you say that about the guilt because I had a period where I was traveling extensively when my two boys were very
Yeah.
young too. And I can remember them saying, "Mom, I don't want you to go again." And
Yes.
part of me is crying inside.
Yeah.
But I would sit down with them like you did with your children at a young age and say, "Look, I want you to want to work as much as I want to work. I
Yeah.
want you to have the passion that I have for what I do, and this is part of what I do. Going out and I believe that of course they still they weren't always happy,
Of course.
but
Yes.
they had even in that young age that sense of just a different level of
Yeah.
understanding and respect for it,
Yep.
and like you said, when we're together, we make our time more quality.
Yes.
I've never been the stay at home mom, and you obviously haven't either. But
Yeah.
we make up for it in other ways, and
Yes.
that's it. So
Exactly.
everyone walks their own path, and
Yep.
there's many couples that both work. There's
Yep.
many couples where the dad stays home. There's many couples where there's dual dads and dual moms and doing there's
Yep.
so many different families now that are making it work.
Yep.
And I think that the real foundation that I keep hearing people come back to is clear communication, clear empathy for, regardless of age. Don't assume your child doesn't understand at whatever age they are. Having the conversations and starting to bring to light these
Yeah.
topics because they'll remember it. I can remember conversations that my parents had with me when I was young, So if they're important enough, you remember them.
You
So
remember. Exactly. That's so true.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it goes with you. It goes with you a long time. It goes with you throughout your career when you make decisions.
So,
So as you think about now in the C-suite, maybe you could tell us a little bit about as you took on your first C-suite role,
mhm.
um, all of the lessons that led you up to that point. Were there any that really were incredibly valuable for you as an early C-suite executive? Because it really is very different. Once you're sitting at the table running an organization, it's different. The buck stops with you, right? So I'm curious if there are things that had prepared you best for it, because so often I get calls from individuals who are interested in aspiring to the C-suite and they want to get certain experiences. So I was curious what you would share there and what teed you up best for it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Holly, and it's definitely very different. So there's no doubt because a lot of times you can have a network of people that you're talking to, and sometimes you feel alone. It's like, wow, I've got to ultimately the buck stops with me, and I've got to make a decision one way or the other. So I think a number of things that can help prepare. So one is really networking with your peers because you're still part of a group and a community, whether it's internally within the company or maybe other colleagues and networking. It always helps to have dialogue and discussion. I would say so kind of continue to build on that so that then you don't feel as alone or you've at least got a sounding board to kind of talk to other CIOs or other executives who might be able to give you another point of view to at least consider and think through. So I would say that is really important to kind of have. I think the second thing is, and I learned this through the course of my career, a lot of times growing up, had this image of, leadership means I need to know all the answers. I need to be brave. I need to be confident in front of my team. Is sort of the way I sort of learned leadership or management, I guess, as I grew through my career. And I learned much later on that it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to actually tell the team because sometimes we don't know the answers. And it's how you say it, how you bring people together. And it's come a long way for me, Holly. On kind of, there are times when I know I've got a path and I've got to be able to explain it and a vision of where things are. Many times I have ideas and I want to actually bring the team and say, I'm scared. This is a very tough challenge that we're taking on, but I'm confident we've got the elements to figure this out and doing it, and being open about it has taught me and has gone a long way in kind of bringing my team and making them feel comfortable that it's okay. Because otherwise they feel vulnerable. Oh my gosh, maybe everybody knows the answer and I don't know. And where it warrants it, of course. But I definitely think that bringing your team together, creating that inclusive environment, which we talked about earlier, is super important. And then engaging and making them part of the solution. Many times, then you don't feel as alone. Oh my God, I've got to figure everything out. Ultimately, yes, you might need to take a decision. You've got to do things, which is okay. So I think bringing that in. And then I think being okay for taking calculated risks. I think that's another, being comfortable in yourself to say, it's okay, I'm going to make mistakes sometimes, but hopefully not catastrophic things, or I'll learn and quickly pivot and say it's okay and admit that there are, I mean, risk taking is such a important aspect of growing and learning and leading. I really think it's the other side of the coin, right? You can be strategic, but if you don't take the right risks, you'll never move forward. And so embracing that and embracing that with your team, I think is important. So those are at least my own personal lessons that I learned that I've, again, it's not a perfect science, and I'm still every single day learning through this process of things that have gone well, or geez, I wish I'd done this slightly differently, because every situation, every company is different. But I do think those sort of have helped me kind of make sure, because it's a lot. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be, I don't know the path forward. And I think it's okay to admit sometimes and be able to fill yourself with the right network to help you figure out where and how to go.
That authenticity, yet confidence. So you're tangible. You're getting buy-in from your team. You're pulling them in. You're pulling them close. They know you're real. They know you care. It sounds like it starts with, they know you care. They know you care deeply about the goal, about them, and then of course about the right solution. And knowing, I love that you're open and candid about things that you know and don't know, and relying on your network. That's incredibly valuable. I think that's the thing I hear the most when people are new in the C-suite is, I didn't realize how alone I'd feel. You know, they don't, because there's nowhere, they feel, at least in the moment, that there's no one that has the ability to help them through. But you're right. You need to maintain and foster that relationship. That's great insight. That is really good insight. So you, as a CIO in today, to me, this is, you're in the hot seat for the next who knows how long. This is the heyday, right? So you've spent your career in technology. You've been through the .com, the Y2K, you've been through, and now here we are, surviving COVID and getting through. I'm optimistic that we're all going to be just fine. What do you see in terms of the next few years, especially on the IT side, on the IT highway, and its influence in the big picture, and also in medtech? I'd love to hear from your vantage point what you see happening.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Holly. I think this is a fantastic time to be in technology. I feel so grateful to be a part of it, and it's such an exciting time when things are really exploding from the capability and the possibility, if you will. So certainly, I think a lot of years coming up till now, we've been focusing on how do I automate things? How do I kind of make sure I digitize information and to be able to operate as a scale of a company or a global company? But I think for me, as I look forward, it's really taking it to that next frontier on how do I take information and data and make that a competitive differentiation. We're sitting on data, in my mind, is the new currencies, the new oil that's out there, that really you can capitalize it if used appropriately, not just data for the sake of it and reports after whatever, right? So you can kind of look at data in that aspect, or you can say, how do I use data to make informed decisions? How do I use that to, at the right time, at the right place, to help drive decision making, guide behavioral decision making, have intelligent care pathways? I mean, there's so much. So if I think about healthcare and the pharma medtech space, really explosions in kind of advanced analytics, IoT devices. I mean, we're collecting data all over the place. Now, just collecting it is not going to be enough. How do you take it? How do you harness it? And more important than even that, because I think that's sort of where we are. After you harness it, how do you provide it at the right time for the right person to make the right decision? So if I'm a physician taking care of a patient, would you, because we're information overloaded now. So we've kind of gone to the other side of there's too much of data, then you start to like feel overwhelmed and it doesn't give you the value that it does. So I think that next frontier of kind of we're spending a lot of time really thinking about a role-centric experience. How do I take you as a person, whoever you are, whether you're a patient, you're a physician, and start to think about what is the right components of data and provide it to you at the right component. So it's not overloaded, it's really embedded analytics that we can be taking, whether it's from IoT devices or whether it's from our clinical systems, whichever groups there are. How do you kind of tease out the right things and then embed that into your workflow of whether you're a clinician, a nurse, whatever activity that you're doing, so you're able to make the right choices or it guides you towards the right choices that you've got to make. So it is a super exciting time, Holly, I think, in being in technology and just looking at the frontier of where and how it can be applied. So it's more an application of digital technology and really different use cases and different scenarios to really improve, in my case, in the industry I'm in. How do you improve patient care? How do you really up the game from the future of care in how you provide that through the use of data and technology? So it's truly, I think, a very, very interesting time and a great time to be in technology and kind of really connecting the dots. So I really think as CIOs, it's really focusing on the I within the CIO, I think is what's important. It's really all about information, integration, brokering the right things to provide, I think is more critical than just a set of siloed applications that we've all been kind of creating, which was important. I mean, there was a play there, but I think it's now getting to the next level.
It's fascinating. I completely agree that data is the new currency, and moving forward, it's what we have to whittle through and figure out what's going to be most compelling, most useful, because now we have so much information coming at us every day, right? So and we're in healthcare, so you and I have a view of how data and the collection and information can be used for the greater good. There's a significant portion of the population that has legitimate fear about the accessibility of data and the use of data and the manipulation associated with that. Do you have any thoughts or any counsel to those, especially, again, coming back to early in career, who are considering something along the lines of IT and the world there, to ensure that we are keeping it for the greater good?
So absolutely, Holly. I think it's really important, especially today, when you think about technology and data. It's about privacy, it's about security, it's about making sure the ethical usage of data. There's a lot of things that start to come into play. And I think really understanding, even if that's not a deep part of the career that you want to get into and be an expert in that area, but it's very critical as you think about a broader career in technology to really start having those elements in and kind of getting your exposure, learning about it, maybe sometimes taking a lateral role, which I did through the course of my career as I went through. So you can get a little bit deeper into it, understand it better, and then perhaps you can get into other areas of technology that you're more interested in. But I do think it goes almost hand in hand. It's the other side of the coin, if you will, that you've got to really think about usage of technology and how it's used is equally as important as mining the data and having the ability to doing that. So it's a really good point. I think for the broader career growth in this area, I think it's really important to understand and appreciate the nuances of that.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And we've seen in med tech, especially in the last few years, probably the last like 5 to 7 years, a migration of engineers and individuals who are coming from other industries that are data centric coming into healthcare because of their perception of how the data is being used. You know, they've made a conscious choice to want to be, because you know as well as I do, healthcare is not always the highest paying. They're not always going to have the stock options and so forth that's associated with some of your high tech big plays, right? So the draw, it may be humanity, and I've seen that often. So thank you for your comments there, and that's really exciting. Any additional thoughts that you'd like to share for those aspiring to a career similar to yours?
Yeah, so I would say just enjoy and kind of start to explore things. Sometimes you don't have to go after a very a checkered path to getting to where you are. Follow your passions and your dreams, and also take something that kind of gets you out of your comfort zone. If that's one piece of advice, as I look back to my own self and think about where I've gone, but also what I wish as I've kind of gone navigated through. I think keeping that center of mind is really important to kind of help you pursue your passions, and that'll lead you to whichever path you're going.
Anjana, this has been fascinating. I so appreciate you making some time for us. And I know I went way over, but I could have gone another 2 hours because your background's really interesting. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure, Holly.
Uh, Hope to see you again soon. Thanks for joining us on the Power Car. See you next time.